God here. And it's football season. And it's like 100 degrees outside. Sorry about that. Welcome to Season 4 of Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoyseth and Dave Daba.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. It is the AFC NFC Championship weekend. Oh boy, it is a big weekend of football. That is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave Daba up in Northern California. And I think, Brad, we are the show that is unlike any other show in North America. We knew Jim Harbaugh was going to say the Los Angeles Chargers. I swear months ago, I knew this was actually going to happen. Mr. Hoyseth, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm glad that you knew it because I had no idea. I mean, I've been saying on here for weeks that it's just not a good match because the Chargers don't like to spend money, right? I mean, I've lived here since 89, I think. So you do the math on that, 35 years or so. And the Chargers, I don't remember them ever spending money just for the sake of spending money. So I'm sure Harbaugh didn't come cheap, but nonetheless, you got it right. I got it wrong. And, well, I think it's good for the Chargers, though. I mean, I think he's been a proven winner wherever he's gone. You got to wonder what made it happen. I mean, I know college football is a grind. I mean, that's a 12-month deal. I think maybe the grind of the NFL is a little bit less. I think NFL guys get paid less, but at the same time, maybe a little less strenuous. You get that couple months off where you get to kind of relax during the off season, but you just don't get that in college football. So, I'm sure he was going to get a big payday. What? You hear that? The dogs are happy about Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, I mean, his payday in Michigan would have been like $12.5 million. And Brandon Staley, the head coach that was clearly their HR department didn't do a good job. I mean, like the HR department there in with the Los Angeles Chargers, when they were interviewing Brandon Staley's references, they should have asked the highly important question, how is Brandon Staley with clock management? Because clearly that did not get asked of his references.
Dave, you just spoke for the last minute and a half. I heard like Brandon Staley 3 times.
Yeah,
because I'm sure you heard my dogs. They were their clock management. I heard clock management. Their clock management was very good.
So Brandon Staley. So back in the day when they hired Brandon Staley, the HR department, I'm sure, did reference checks. And when they were doing reference checks for Brandon Staley, I wonder why they didn't ask any of his references how good Brandon Staley is with clock management.
Well, it wasn't very good, and I think it was his undoing. There's no question about that. That and, going for it on 4th down at your own 22 and, all the nonsense he tried. It was just – you could see that coming a mile away. I mean, there's not a lot of new tricks when it comes to football.
Yeah.
And people figure them out. And I thought was a really telling moment in that Eagles game a couple weeks ago was when they got stopped at the goal line, right? And all season long they had been, the big push play that they had been using, brotherly shove or whatever they were calling it. It finally got stopped. New wrinkles don't work for that long in the NFL. At the end of the day, if your line is moving their line that way, you've got a pretty good chance of winning a game over time.
Yeah. And, last offseason, there was talk about outlawing the tush push or whatever they're calling it. And the NFL committee voted not to do that. And this is exactly why, because, eventually everybody sort of figures it out and then they come up with a strategy of stopping it. And that's what makes that's one of the things that makes football fun.
All right, well, let's jump into the games here. We got 2 of them. That's all this week. And so far, I think I'm about 500 during the playoffs. There's been a lot of surprises. I mean, a lot of things I didn't see coming.
I have to say this. I went 3 for 4 last week, Brad.
You did. I did not. I didn't do well. I think I just went 1-3. So it puts me at 500 for the playoffs. But the Chiefs are at the Ravens. The Ravens are 3.5-point favorites. I still don't think the Chiefs are a very good football team, Dave. And they've been fortunate that for 2 weeks straight now with the Dolphins and the Bills, they've managed to play the two most injured teams coming into the playoffs. They're not going to meet that this week. They're going to get a Ravens team that's fully healthy. The Bills are still a mystery to me. I think you and I were texting back and forth last week. They're basically the Vikings of the AFC. They just can't get out of the way of themselves. They're so impatient. I thought that game was lost before they tried the field goal and missed it. When they took the deep shot and didn't connect, and then had to end up trying to settle for a field goal. I think I sent you a text before the field goal attempt and said, this game's over, right? Because they just left too much time on the clock. And it just appears like the Bills are continuously playing checkers and the Chiefs are playing chess. And they just think on a higher level. I mean, that was a clock management game. And every single time that the Bills tried to take a deep shot, they came up empty. They ended up behind the sticks, and they ended up having to punt the ball away. And that was just not a game where you could afford to punt the ball away. And so anyways, I just think that the Ravens are the better football team here. I don't think the Chiefs are still a very good football team. I really don't. I said it at the beginning of the playoffs. I think the two teams that had played in the Super Bowl last year were going to have an early exit. The Chiefs managed to last one more week than I thought, but I think they're gone this weekend. And I think the Ravens clearly beat that spread by more than 3.5.
Yeah, my original, first week one Gods of Odds this season, Brad, the Dallas Cowboys against the Kansas City Chiefs, with the Kansas City Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. So obviously I got the Cowboys wrong, as did most of America. Don't let me get fooled by the Cowboys next season, please.
I let you get fooled if you get, it's up to you, really. Don't lay that on me.
Friends don't let friends get fooled. I'm planning on taking the Kansas City Chiefs over the Ravens in this game, but I am just highly skeptical for all of the reasons you mentioned. I think like the Ravens can win this game pretty easily, actually, if they can figure out how to get a lot of pressure on Patrick Mahomes. Now, I heard yesterday that one of his key offensive linemen is actually going to be out for this game. And that's why I am a little concerned with my pick to pick the Chiefs, Brad. And while I really want to take the Ravens, and I am going to say this, I think the Ravens are going to win, just not by the 3.5. So with that being said, I'm going to go. That's how I hedge my bets on this. I'm taking the Chiefs. I'm going to stick with the Chiefs in this one. Great quarterbacks. Like truly great quarterbacks are hard to come by. And I think Patrick Mahomes is, a step above Lamar Jackson. I love Lamar Jackson. I love his game. I love what the Baltimore Ravens are doing, but I'm almost shocked you're going with John Harbaugh in this whole thing, to be honest. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with my original pick and take the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's tough for me to take John Harbaugh. I think, honest to truth, I think if the line was 9, I would take the Ravens. I really don't think it's a close football game. Yeah. I don't. I just don't think the Chiefs are that great. I think the time has expired on that. They played Miami, who had 0 defenders left on the field. They had guys, free agents off the street that were playing in that first playoff round. And then last week with Buffalo was basically the same thing. They didn't have any of their best players. Now, both weeks they managed to kind of eke out a win, and a lot of that was, I think, on Buffalo. I think Buffalo should have won the game, but at the same time, they just, they failed to put teams away, Buffalo. And so
I was going to say, Andy Reid, please do not run any more reverses at the 1 yard line. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Look, the Chiefs could have won by actually a lot more, and that last drive could have meant a lot less if the Chiefs had not made a couple mistakes down the road. Now, with the Bills having the opportunity, though, with that being said, with 8 minutes, Diggs misses, drops the pass, and then they still drive down the field. It wasn't the missed throw in the end zone, the first missed throw in the end zone that bothered me. It was the play call on third down that bothered me. And that's where I think the Bills really lost this. That play just completely fizzled out. It had no chance at all. You might as well have ran something towards the middle of the field that would have put your kicker in a better position, because he was kicking from the far right hash mark. And as you know, that ball made a immediate right towards the Atlantic when it came off of the kicker's foot. So, because that's where the wind was blowing, Brad. So they made that play, that third down play where they took a shot at the end zone, was the wrong call, was completely the wrong call, especially if you were considering just trying to tie the game and try to believe your defense is going to hold Patrick Mahomes up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember texting you. There was like 7 or 8 minutes left, and I said, "This is too much time. This is not the time." As I told a buddy of mine this week, I said, the Bills are worried about scoring quickly. The Chiefs are worried about scoring last.
Yeah,
and so that's where they're the masters, and they're playing chess. And I just thought the Bills, they showed the cards. A couple plays too early. All they had to do was get another first down. If they got another first down and end up scoring a touchdown, the game is over. They win it. But that's why the Chiefs are great, and that's why the Chiefs and Andy Reid keep winning titles, and the Bills keep losing opportunities.
You just watch. Like, if they feel like the Ravens are getting too much pressure on Mahomes early in the game, they will go to a screen pass offense and run the ball 7 out of 10 times, and they'll whittle the clock down, and when you get down towards the end of the game, it will still be close.
Yeah, see, I don't see it, Dave. I just don't. That Raven defense is legit. I mean, that's not there. It is nothing like what they've seen the last 2 weekends. Okay, it's not Miami with guys off the streets. It's not Buffalo, who couldn't cover the middle of the field. Travis Kelce's not going to be running free. They're well aware who he is. I don't think they're afraid of any. Rashee Rice is really the guy that has emerged out of this deal with the Chiefs. That's looking like a pretty good target. I don't see the running game being effective. I think it's going to be a struggle for him. And if the Ravens get up on top, look, Josh Allen was very effective running the football against that Kansas City defense. Yeah. And if you think he can run it, wait till you see what Jackson can do, because he's lightning in a bottle, right? So I just don't see any way for the Chiefs to play catch up in this. I've looked at it from a number of angles. They're just far better football team defensively, the Ravens. Spagnuolo did a magnificent job in this fourth quarter of that game. He switched things up. He started putting pressure on Josh Allen, and finally they had to punt the ball a couple times. And to me, that was really the difference in the game. I think it's a little more challenging to devise a game plan against Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. It is difficult for a variety of reasons to try to devise a specific game plan. Yeah, I mean, you have to take a player or two and isolate him on Lamar Jackson, and that definitely opens up both the running game and down the field passing as well. So it is certainly going to be a challenge. I will remind you, though, however, Mr. Hoysaf, that at halftime last week, the score of that game was 10-10, I think. And the Houston Texans, the upstart Houston Texans, at least took it into halftime close. So I don't, I don't think this is going to be like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Super Bowl win over Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, where they totally blow them out. I just think this game's going to be a lot closer than you think it is. All right, let's. I was so close to going Ravens. Let's move on now to America's story that, quite frankly, nobody's really talking about. I mean, there are occasionally people in the press talking about it a little bit, but I mean, how great is Dan Campbell? I mean, seriously, Dan Campbell has Brad. The Detroit Lions are a game away from making it to the Super Bowl as I sit here wearing my disgruntled Minnesota Viking hat because we let Jim Harbaugh walk out the door 2 years ago. I'm so disgruntled as a Viking fan right now, and I become even more bitter. I remember when Brad Johnson won the Super Bowl with the Buccaneers, how bitter I was when that happened. I was like, the Buccaneers won a Super Bowl before the Vikings? That's ridiculous, because historically the Buccaneer organization, at least to that point, had been a bit of a mess. And now here we are with our beautiful playoff appearance sign in Minnesota, which we're really proud of. And we have to sit back and watch the Detroit Lions at least have a chance of going to the Super Bowl. So in this particular game, the 49ers are actually favored by 7. I like the Lions to, at the very least, cover in this. I'm going to go and take the Lions. I saw the real Brock Purdy play in person against the Dallas Cowboys. And we know he had a fantastic game against the Cowboys. I saw the real Brock Purdy play on television last weekend as well. And I know that pressure does get to Brock Purdy. So there is a strategy here that could work. I'm not saying it's going to work, but that could work if Detroit can get out early on San Francisco and rattle Brock Purdy's cage. Then I think the Lions actually, beyond the point spread, have a legitimate chance of actually going to the Super Bowl this year, which is so difficult, Hoyseth, for me to fathom that we would have 2 weeks of the Detroit Lions lead up to a Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's just hard for me to fathom that whole thing.
David, all ends this weekend. I'm sorry. It all ends this weekend.
And you're a storyteller killer, Brad.
I'm sorry. It ends. It just the only thing that's may have made this thing closer is the Deebo Samuel shoulder. I mean, right? Because remember what I said last week? I said next week the Lion fans aren't going to like my prediction, right? Yeah. Because if Deebo is healthy, I think the Lions blow him out, flat out. I don't think it's a close football. That defense is terrible. I mean, that's the worst defense remaining in football. In the playoffs, right? But no Deebo, it makes things a little trickier. Ayuk he's not Deebo. You got to get Kittle more involved, which is probably a good thing. And then McCaffrey, everybody knows McCaffrey's going to get it, twice, every 4 plays, right? So that's just the way their offense kind of runs through him. And, I just don't think the Lions are going to get any benefits of those calls this time around, right? They got a ton of calls a couple of weeks ago, and they barely escaped. And then last week, I just think they played a solid game, but it wasn't. I didn't think it was great football by any means. So I just think the Niners, look, they did something they'd never done under Shanahan. I was really fearful when it went into the fourth quarter. I don't know if you remember, they showed that stat that the 49ers were 0-30 under Shanahan when they trailed by 5 or more going into the fourth, right? And I thought, oh my God, they're going to get beat, right?
That is one of the most amazing stats in the history of the National Football League. The fact that more people don't talk about that often is mind blowing.
Yeah, and my thought was, he's maybe he's not that great. I don't know, but look, they're the better football team, and I don't know what's more mind-boggling is the fact that the Lions go to the Super Bowl or Jared Goff goes to the Super Bowl. So I mean, I don't know. I guess it's probably the Lions is the bigger story there, but at the same time, I think it all runs out this week. I could see the Lions being going back to a 500 football team next year. They got to get that defense sorted out. It's not very good, and they got one guy up front that's a pretty good football player, and the rest of that defense is pretty soft. Now they got their secondary hits, and they play hard, but they just don't cover many people.
I think the next season for the Lions is really a question of whether or not their offensive coordinator is still there, or if he has been gobbled up by another team. You know what the Detroit Lions do? It's what the Kansas City Chiefs do as well, which is you look up and maybe they're not playing the best game, but they're winning the game somehow. And that's what the Lions have done this season on numerous occasions. Like Tampa, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a legitimate chance of beating Detroit last week in the second half. And my boy Baker, fell a bit short. But good teams tend to. This is a earth-shattering statement. Good teams tend to find themselves out ahead, even if they don't deserve to be there.
Yeah, good teams tend to find a way to beat Baker. You can just put it at that.
Well, that's true too. I mean, so I just like Jared Goff's wears the number 16. Of course, because he grew up in the Bay Area, and it was Joe Montana that he got to watch some highlights of as a kid. That right there should give you some thought for pause on your 49er pick. To me, this game is won or lost by the 49ers' ability to prevent Brock Purdy from getting rattled in the first quarter of the game. So if Hutchinson and the rest of that D-line can apply pressure early to Purdy, then I think the Lions actually have a legitimate chance of winning. If that doesn't happen, then I could see the 49ers just running away with it. Detroit's got a never give up attitude. I could see them coming back and making it semi-close, which is why I'm taking the Lions and the points in this one.
Let me tell you what's going to happen on the first drive, Dave. The 49ers are going to get the ball, and they're going to run it right up their ass all the way down the field, and they're going to go in for a touchdown, and it's going to take about 6 minutes, and it's going to look a lot like they did against the Rams a couple of years ago, because the Lions won't be able to stop them. I really don't think that defense is built to play in an NFC title game. I think the Ravens and the 49ers have proven to be the best two teams, in football down the stretch here. I know the Niners now, it's a little trickier with Debo being hurt, but, they're still a really good football team. And the Lions, I still think, are quite a few pieces away on defense. Now, here's a question for you. Anyways, I'm obviously going to take the Niners. I'm going to give the 7, but who comes into the season next year as the favorites in the NFC North? Is it the Lions or the Packers?
I would have the Lions. Once again, it's a question of what happens with their offensive coordinator. They also were aggressive this past offseason. They did make a lot of changes. So I think it's a question of what kind of changes they're going to make via free agency. I don't think people are like, oh, I got to go play with Jared Goff or anything like that. But you might have some of that on the defensive side of the end with Hutchinson, where you're able to use him to recruit and upgrade your defense to an extent. So I think I don't see them necessarily having a down year like you do. And I'm really sort of curious to see what happens with Jordan Love and the Packers if he actually continues to take steps forward, or if at least at the start of the season they dig themselves a bit of a hole like they did this year. So if I had to choose, I certainly wouldn't be taking the Chicago Bears. It's impossible to legitimately take the Vikes at this point when you don't have a quarterback under contract. And between the Bears and the Packers, or between the Lions and the Packers, I go Lions.
Hey, I was looking at another thing this weekend too, and that's the Vikings. Talking about the Vikings and Justin Jefferson, and diva wide. There's no diva wide receivers left, Dave. And if you look historically over the last 10, 12 years, the teams that win Super Bowls don't really have diva wide receivers. You know what they do have? Look at this weekend. You got arguably 4 of the best tight ends in all of football.
Yeah,
playing this weekend. And if you add in Isaiah Likely, who had a really nice finish, you might have 5 of the best tight ends playing this weekend. And you have consistent quarterback play. And so I asked the question to a group of Vikings fans, what do you do if Chicago or Arizona are interested in Justin Jefferson? Do you deal him during the draft and get a high draft pick?
I think you try to bring JJ back. I don't like the idea of JJ not being on this team, especially at this stage of his career. The enigma in Minnesota once again is who's the quarterback going to be moving forward, and I think that's where I sort of fall on that side of the fence. And by the way, I just got a text message from OBJ, who is a diva. And he wanted me to remind you, Brad, that he's still in the National Football League and he happens to be on the Ravens football team. Yeah, but of course he's an over-the-hill diva.
I know that. Right? I know that. OBJ is still there, but he's not making that big contract anymore, and he's not the diva he wants. He's a piece of the puzzle now, right? I'm talking the guy that eats up a huge salary, and now suddenly there's not enough money to go around, right? And Brady and company, they seem to figure that out over a 20-year period. He took a lot of pay cuts to make sure Rob Gronkowski was happy, to make sure there was offensive linemen that were happy, all those things. And the Vikings have always had this obsession with having a great wide receiver, whether it's, Jefferson or whether it's Randy Moss or Ahmad Rashad or, any of the Carters, you name it. They've always had a high-profile guy, and it doesn't work.
Yeah. I don't know. I have to go back and look at that historically and look at the teams that won the Super Bowl and who they had. I mean, Tyreek Hill won a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs.
But Tyreek Hill was not a high-priced diva at the time. If you remember, he was just a piece of the puzzle. They had a lot of guys there. Antonio Brown won, and then he got a payday and went off the edge, right? Yeah. I mean, if you look historically, Emmanuel Sanders wasn't a high-priced diva. Victor Cruz wasn't a high-priced diva. If you look over the last 10, 12 years, there's really not been one of those guys. Maybe Mike Evans, but he's not. I wouldn't really consider Mike Evans a diva, but he's a great player, right? But he's probably the guy that's made the most money and won a Super Bowl.
And when you watch Mike Evans play too, he's sort of a hybrid wide receiver tight end. Obviously he's a wide receiver, but he's big body like a tight end. And so he might be the exception. And I don't know, Tampa's got to make a decision on Mike Evans during the off season. Like, they've got to decide, are they bringing Baker back? And if they are, they're probably going to have to pay him $30 million a year, which is probably what he deserves at this point. Look, like the Daniel Jones is making $45 million a year. So paying Baker 30 or 35 a year on a 3-year deal with 2 years guarantees, seems to be a fair deal for Baker.
Dave, Baker Mayfield is fool's gold. That's what he is. He's fool's gold. He was exactly himself last week. That's why he's never going to win anything big. He's just not consistent.
Right. And you have to remember too, like Tampa was like, they didn't think they were going to sniff the playoffs this year. So
no, it was a great year for the Buccaneers. It really was. But it reminded me of the last time the Vikings were successful. Who was it they had as his quarterback? He came in, and I can't remember who it was, but he brought him to the NFC title game. Do you remember who was that guy?
Dante Culpepper?
No, it was post Culpepper. It was, just 7 years ago. And the guy came in. He's still in the league. I can't remember who it is. But
yeah, he plays for the Texans now.
Right, exactly.
He threw the Minneapolis Miracle.
But everybody's got a season in them, right? But at the end of the day, Mayfield, he's really a turnover machine at times. He makes some decisions that are just puzzling.
I mean, and when you look back at Tampa, I can't even believe we've talked so much about Detroit and Tampa on this show. But when you look back at Tampa during this past offseason as well, they didn't sign Mike Evans to a long-term contract. And in fact, Mike Evans is a free agent. He is free to move about the country. And so like,
it sounds like a Southwest Airlines commercial.
It is perfect. So, like he's just going to walk. They're not going to get any compensation. I mean, obviously he would like to come back to Tampa, but he can go anywhere in the National Football League. And, if you're, so Tampa was fully anticipating the fact that this was going to be a really down year. And that's one of the reasons they didn't sign Evans to a contract extension.
So what you're saying is if the Arizona Cardinals at 4 want Justin Jefferson for the number 1 pick, you ain't doing it.
Oh, well, where are the Cardinals picking?
I think they're number 4. I'm putting you on the spot now.
Yeah, if that means we're taking a quarterback that I actually believe in, then maybe you do it.
Right. Well, I mean, if there's a quarterback there that you think is, of value and it's a future quarterback and you'll get him on his rookie contract for 3 years, because the Vikings are in a pickle with Cousins, right? I mean, you really can't give him any type of contract without seeing how that Achilles is, right? You just can't do it. I mean, who's going to take that opportunity? You're not going to give him $40 million over, for a couple years. There's no if you don't know he's healthy. He's a 36-year-old man coming off an Achilles. There's no possible way you can give him a big, huge contract. You can give him a contract laden with incentives. The further we go, the more you get, something like that. But I'm not giving that guy a contract without seeing the way he's running, handling pressure, throwing the ball. There's no chance.
Yeah, I somebody's going to give him a contract, and it's
good luck, Washington, right?
He's going back to Washington, Atlanta. Right. It just should be a very interesting offseason. So, Brad, I have a question for you. Is Bill Belichick going to be like you and me next season, not on the sidelines coaching a National Football League team?
Well, hold on. Maybe we can get him on our show. What do you think?
Well, he might have some time.
I can do a good impression of him, but
Belichick, by the way, is fantastic. If you get him away from the football team, I don't know if you remember, he did all those things with NFL Films for the greatest 100 years of the NFL. He's totally funny. He's a funny guy.
So Harbaugh to Chargers, is that a good deal or is that a waste of money?
No, it's so 2 questions for you, Brad, because you skirted the first. The answer to the Harbaugh thing is that to me was an absolute no-brainer. They don't have a GM in place yet, which means Harbaugh is going to probably be responsible for figuring out who that's going to be. On the defensive side of the ball, yesterday, early in the morning, Vic Fangio suddenly decided he didn't like South Beach and he resigned from the Miami Dolphins, not saying that he's going to the Chargers, but that could be something in the works with Harbaugh there. I think as long as the Spanoses don't pull a Jed York and can stay out of his hair, this is going to work out for the Chargers. At some point in the next 3 or 4 years, this Los Angeles Charger team will find itself in the Super Bowl. Not saying they're going to win it, but they will find themselves there. Harbaugh is a great coach. He's even better at setting culture. And that's exactly what that organization needs at this point. So I'm a big fan of that. But Brad, seriously, will Bill Belichick be coaching next year?
I don't know, Dave. I mean, I still think Seattle's a natural fit, or and Atlanta's an outside. But I don't. If he hasn't taken the Atlanta job by now, I don't think that's in play. Do you think, or is Atlanta said, we'd also like to talk to so and so from the 49ers or something along those lines?
I suspect that the owner was okay with bringing Belichick in, and the rest of the player or the rest of the operations team decided they didn't want to lose control, because that's what Belichick is going to want.
Yeah, I think so.
So I mean, I think it's starting to look like Bill's going to be joining us on Gods of Odds. We'll set up a third box. He'll be joining us on Gods of Odds next season, because I'm not seeing it. I mean, something could happen with the Commanders. I don't think the Bills. There's all this stuff about how Sean McDermott should be let go after what happened in Buffalo, and all these people in the media are talking about, he's had his time to make it happen and it hasn't happened yet. And I don't know. I mean, I like McDermott. They've been through a lot as an organization in the last 24 years or 24 months, that is. And I think, he deserves, at least another season. I would give him another season.
Has anything been decided in Seattle yet? Or is that getting close?
I think Seattle should interview Pete Carroll. I think they should go back and interview Pete Carroll.
Yeah, I've always thought that Belichick would look good in the Seattle Seahawk gear. I mean, it's a coast, it's a northern coast team, and the owner up there likes to spend money. He's at times given up some control. He gave a lot of control to Pete Carroll, right? So it just, to me, that just seemed like the most natural fit from the beginning. I mean, I didn't think Atlanta was a natural fit. There's no winning culture there. Yeah. It hasn't been, for a long, long time. And so Seattle at least has a little bit more of a winning culture. They got that 12th man thing going on up there, and it's a great fan base, right? Whereas Atlanta, again, is kind of fickle and heckle and Jekyll, that kind of thing. But
assuming he doesn't end up in Atlanta, it's just so, like, if you're the the Tennessee Titans, what the hell are you thinking? The greatest coach in the history of the National Football League wants to still coach, and you're the Tennessee Titans. You don't deserve to not call up Bill Belichick and say, you run the show. The Titans organization continues to make bad decisions, one bad decision after another. The first being the fact that they're building a dome stadium. I'm bitter about that. They should play outside.
That has rankled you for a large portion of this season. It's been an ongoing, dialogue that you've brought up there. But where's Dan Quinn? Where is he these days, Dave?
Dan Quinn's not getting a job. How could, I don't know. Maybe he could go in and convince David Tepper that he's the right guy, and and go sit on the what will be the hottest seat in the National Football League once again, which is the Carolina Panthers. Look, there's only a couple coaches in that are available right now that can actually turn that Panther team around. And there's seasoned coaches that probably know better than to go work for this particular Carolina Panthers organization.
All right, one little last note before we get out of here. A little birdie told me Dave turned 73 today. Is that
35.
Yeah,
you can do
something
the
like
math.
that. It was something like that. So happy birthday to Dave out there, people. You can go in the comments section and give him a happy. Hey, you know what? Here's what they do in the comments section, Dave. I want them to guess your age. How's that?
There you go.
How's that? They're going to guess your age in the comment section, but happy birthday.
That's fantastic. And in the software we're using, just so everybody's aware, I'm using the remove wrinkles feature. So hopefully that makes me look younger. Brad, I've never been like huge into my own birth. I'm into other people's birthdays a little bit more than my own, but we certainly will have a nice family dinner tonight, and all of that is right around the corner.
One more note, Dave, and I had a beef with this a couple of weeks ago. It might have been last week. I don't remember. At least you're wearing your hat forward, unlike Dan Quinn, who likes to do that backwards hat thing. Don't give me the backwards hat thing.
Yeah,
ever.
It's like I love the backwards hat, as I mentioned before. Brad, can you give us any Bill Belichick hearing from the Atlanta Falcons that they've turned him down? Can you do an impersonation on that at all?
Well, we're just we're preparing for this week, and we're gonna go into this thing just like any other game, and if the Falcons want something to do with me, then that's all well and good, but I got the next thing on my agenda. I'm worried about that more than what people think,
Okay, there you go. Bill Belichick and Brad Hoyseth have gone fishing, I think. All right, that is it for this week's Gods of Odds. Thanks so much for tuning in. That is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California, and he's on air, by the way. I'm Dave DeBaugh up in Northern California, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.